through hiking? Is it a cheap or expensive hobby? Now, I'm not going to answer that question, but I am going to let you know about all of the unexpected costs that people often forget about that they need to pay for before they even start hiking a long trail. And I'm not even talking about gear. I'm planning on hiking the Continental Divide Trail this year, but many of these expenses apply to whatever long hike you're planning on doing. So, without further ado, here are the top 5 things that people often forget to budget for. Number 1 is maps. Knowing where to go, how to navigate, and not get lost on your chosen trail is important. There are plenty of free resources out there. However, for decent topographical maps, this will often cost you in some way, whether that be an app or paper maps or a guidebook. The go-to for many long distance trails these days is the app Far Out, which I happen to be an ambassador for. However, I had already bought the Continental Divide Trail maps when I reached out to them and asked if I could be a scout for them. So unfortunately, I'm not saving any money there. However, I did receive from them some really cool swag, including these stickers. How cool are these stickers? But no matter what you choose, you will often be set back between 20 to 50 US dollars, depending on the type of map and how many of them you'll need for your chosen app or map set or guidebook. Okay, number 2 is a visa. So this is one where if you are planning on hiking in your home country or doing a hike that is less than 3 months, then you should be able to get away without having a visa or being able to go in on a normal tourist visa. However, if you are planning on doing a trail like the Tiararoa in New Zealand or the GR5 or Hexatrek in Europe, then you most likely are going to need an extended tourist visa. Now, the cost of these will depend on what country you are going to and what country you are from. However, to give you a bit of a ballpark figure, for me in 2024 in Australia, to get a 6-month tourist visa for the United States cost me $180 US. Number 3 is getting to the start of the trail. Now, this is the one that will be most variable for people because it will totally depend on where you're coming from. If you're fortunate enough to live in the state where the trail starts, then your costs will be pretty low. But if you're like me and coming from the exact opposite side of the world, then your costs are going to be on the higher end like mine. But let me break it down for you. A plane, train, or automobile of some description will be required to get you to the closest, largest city to the start of your trail. So whether that be San Diego or Atlanta, or for me, I'm heading to Tucson. That will be required in some way. Even if you live within that state, you're still going to need a car and someone to drive you, which costs petrol to get there. If you live within the state that the trail starts, then you might be fortunate enough to get away with less than $100 to get to that closest city to the start of the trail, or even to the start of the trail itself. But I'm guessing that the majority of people who hike long trails don't live in the state that the trail starts in. And so you are looking at least $100 in flights or other transportation to get you to that closest city. Or if you're like me and coming from 1 gazillion, and I do not exaggerate, 1 gazillion miles away, I'm looking at close to $1,000 in flights by the time I get an international flight to LA and then a domestic transfer to Tucson. So not cheap. But the costs don't stop there. Chances are that you'll need to stay at least one night, if not two, in the city closest to the start of the trail, so that you can do things like resupply, pick up a gas canister, which you're often not allowed to travel with, a lighter, things like that. Often what that means is that you'll be looking at the cost of a hotel for a night or two at around $60. Then once you're in that major city, you still then need to get to the start of the trail. Thankfully, for the major long trails in the US, there are shuttles that are available, or it's easy enough to get an Uber or local transport to the start of the trail. But that can vary in cost as well. Often you're looking at around $60 for that, or if you're like me and doing the CDT, which is one of the more remote trails, I have to get a bus from Tucson to Lordsburg, which I'm looking at around $25. And then I need to get a shuttle from Lordsburg down to the southern terminus, which I think was about $175. So all up, I'm looking at close to $200 there to get from the major city to the start of the trail. Okay, number 4 is a Garmin or emergency subscription. Now this is one that not everyone will require. However, I do think that at the bare minimum, it is so useful to carry a PLB, which is a personal locator beacon. So that is the basic unit that allows you to press that big SOS button if things go terribly pear-shaped. And that's just the cost of the PLB itself, and that can go under the cost of gear and doesn't require a subscription. However, most people find it really helpful to have the ability to also be able to send text messages via satellite or check things like the weather. And so therefore, if you are choosing to get a Garmin, or I believe there's ones like Zoleo that are really good these days, then that's going to cost you, like a mobile phone, a basic subscription. And that costs around, for the basic plan, around $20 a month. I upgraded to a Garmin about a year ago. I used to just carry a PLB. But the reason I upgraded is because I used my PLB when I was hiking in New Zealand, not for myself, but for a friend who had got injured and needed to be rescued. And that was fantastic that I was able to help him in that way. However, I had no way to communicate with my friends and family who were my emergency contact to let them know that the reason that the button had been pushed was not because I was in trouble. I was safe and I was fine, but that I had done it for a friend. So that was just a really stressful 48 hours until I got out and in a place where I had service again to be able to contact my family and say that I am fine. And so I just think having a Garmin where you can also send text messages is a really helpful thing. And finally, number 5, insurance. Now, as far as I'm aware, the only people who might be able to get away with not paying any insurance are those who are under 26 years old and live in the States and come under their family or parents' insurance plan. For everyone else, it's most likely that you are going to need to think about what health or travel insurance looks like for the period that you are hiking. The cost of this will vary greatly depending on what country you're from, your age, what country you're traveling to, how long the period you need to be covered for is. But to give you a ballpark, for me from Australia traveling to the US looking for travel insurance for 6 months, that will cover me for the basic of things like lost luggage or any emergency health issues that I have, any travel delays. I'm looking at around $800 for the 6 months. And that also includes, I'm adding onto that an emergency search and rescue insurance plan as well. That will be through Garmin. And that just covers me for the fact if I do need to get rescued in some sort of way, then the cost of that rescue will be covered by that separate insurance. But those two things together will be around $800 for the 6 months for me. So in total, the unexpected costs that people often don't think about that you need to pay before you've even set foot on a trail is somewhere between $1,000 and $2,500. So I hope that has been helpful as you think about planning for your own through hikes.